All right. Hi everyone. Welcome to our monthly Fire Safe Sonoma Alliance meeting. My name is Roberta McIntyre. I'm the president and CEO of Fire Safe Sonoma. Fire Safe Sonoma, we've been working in the wildland fire safety space for well over 20 years now. And our mission is to provide education and outreach countywide and even beyond in the space of wildland fire safety risk reduction. Um, we help folks form groups. We help with project management. We help people with grant writing. We help groups get started. That's what we're here for. Um, for those of you that are new to our monthly alliance meetings, the goal of the meeting is to create a space for conversation and partnership on wildfire risk reduction and emergency preparedness all across the county. And then, so one, Once a month, we try to have a guest speaker and provide, some relevant, valuable information to folks in the county. We also try to offer a space for folks to engage and just talk about what's going on, what's going on in your community and my community and their community, share information. Hopefully the end result of that is to work collaboratively on several things and then prevent some redundancies in work countywide. Mason Innumerable, he's an AmeriCorps fellow in the Grizzly Corps program. He's here to assist. So thank you, Mason. Do you want to do a quick introduction? Say hi to everybody.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Yeah, as Roberta mentioned, my name is Mason. I'm a Grizzly Corps fellow, which is under the larger AmeriCorps program. And I'm working with Fire Safe Sonoma and Gold Ridge RCD. So some of you may have seen me at meetings for both or representing both. Yeah, it's just a little bit about me. I've been in the program since about September.
We couldn't get much of what we do at Fire Safe Sonoma completed without Mason's help. And many of you may know Kaylin, she was our last fellow. And so Mason came in behind her. And then Mason will periodically drop some websites and information in the chat as we go. And then Mason's also going to take a look at the chat, and he'll toss us questions when we get to the Q&A. And then if you guys don't mind speaking to chat, as when you get a moment, just add your name and affiliation in the chat if you don't mind. And feel free to share any websites for your affiliation and information about who you're affiliated with in the chat as well. That way other folks can tap into what you have to offer. More housekeeping items. I would like everyone to try to keep yourself muted if you can until you're speaking. And then I think we have the raise your hand feature enabled. So if when we get to Q&A, depending on how many people jump in the room and become attendees, if it gets to be a large group, we're gonna ask folks to raise their hand. But if if it stays a small group, 12 of us or thereabouts, then we could probably, behave ourselves and talk without raising our hands, without talking over each other. But if it gets to be a large group, I want to just ask folks to raise their hand and we'll get to you. We are recording, but we used to just record these for our own purposes for doing minutes, etc. But I decided instead of actually taking written minutes for these, we're just going to go ahead and record it. And we are making these available for folks that request them. So if anybody wants a copy of this presentation, downstream from this presentation, reach out to us and we'll leave it hot or live on our Zoom account. And then we can just share with you that link. And then what we may do is also make it available on our YouTube channel, if we have time to do that. All right, so let's see. I want to hit some quick updates before we get into our guest speakers. So I have 3 quick updates I want to share with you all, at least 3. If I think of others, I'll let you know. So we did just announce that Fire Safe Sonoma, we're looking for an executive coordinator. The salaries between 90 and 120,000 a year is what we're expecting to pay. It'll be a limited term, 1-year term for a full-time executive coordinator. So we hope to onboard them within the next month or so, and then have them take over a lot of the work that I've been doing over the last few years, in light my workload. And then, not sure if any of you are following the Sonoma County sales tax measure that was being proposed. It sounds like the polling that was done by the contractor that the county hired to assist in the endeavor, it sounds like the polling based on the questions asked wasn't going to pass with the number of votes that they needed to pass it. So the County Board of Supervisors will be talking about this on their Tuesday Board of Soups meeting. I haven't seen the agenda, so I don't know where it is on the agenda, but I'm guessing it'll probably be discussed in the morning session. So I will be jumping into that meeting and seeing what they're talking about and probably speak to the issue when they bring it up. So, but yeah, so the way I understand it, the tax measure was meant for fire services specifically, with roughly 10% going towards fire prevention, and maybe a piece of that going towards wildland fire safety. Wasn't really clear to me. I don't know that it was clear to many people. But regardless, we'll be following that and keep you guys updated as that evolves. The countywide community wildfire protection plan update is nearing completion. We're in a series of public feedback opportunities now. Tonight will be, I forget what district, but last night we did District 3. Supervisor Corsi was there last night. Tonight, I would have to look. I don't know. But anyway, if you go to the county.
District 1.
Is it District 1 tonight? Okay, so that'd be Susan Gorin's district. So thank you. And Mason, if you could find that link once we get started and drop it in the chat, that'd be great. And I should have had it in my pocket and to drop in there, but I don't.
District 4 is next week.
And District 4 is next week. Okay. Priscilla, who's tonight? Is District 1 tonight? Is that correct?
I don't have it in front of me, sorry.
I heard somebody mention that District 1's tonight. So anyway, so that's an opportunity, folks, to chime in, and if you see any fatal flaws with the draft in its current form, let the team know, and then those can be addressed. That's really what the purpose is.
Yes, Roberta, I would just like to point out that a number of the appendices for the individual communities were linked up to incorrect information. And I had responded to the information that was sent to us, letting us know that the draft was out there and advised, but I don't know if it got corrected yet or not.
Okay, great. Thanks for sharing that, Susie.
Roberta?
Yes.
This is Julie. So I had exactly the same feedback. And I tried to reach out to Carleon a couple of times and also to the general info that I'm very honored to be included as a resource, but the contact information is totally wrong.
Okay, let's do this. Mason, would you drop Esther's email in the chat? I don't see her here. Esther would be the best person to share that information with. And she's managing that piece of the project. So if you let,
Thank you.
She'll fix it, and she's really good about fixing it. She's overwhelmed, but not quite as overwhelmed as Carleon is. So I think she'll get on it pretty quickly. And then I'm going to make a note to myself to let her know as well. So if we can come at it from several different angles, we'll get it repaired. So that's good feedback.
Thank you.
Okay, I just wrote myself a note to take care of that as well. All right, so then, well, shoot, let's get into our speakers. So we're really excited today to be joined by David Henry and John Segudo. They're both of Team Rubicon. David Henry is our local representative, and John is a little more, he's got Well, I'll let them explain. So, John, why don't you go first? And then I'll just let you introduce David from there. How about that?
Sounds great. Hello, everyone. It's great to be part of your council. As a fellow Sonoma resident, it gives me great comfort to know how important it is the fire safe councils are doing their job. So I just want to start off with a big thank you as a resident first. But I am a 20-year disaster responder. I've been working with Team Rubicon as one of the earlier planners. At this point in history, I'm now the Northern California Senior Lead Planner. That means I support each of the metro regions. We have metro regions that cover about 2 or 3 counties. In this case, Mr. David Henry is your metro planner, so he's your point of contact that you want to reach. Should he ever have to have the audacity to want a vacation or something like that, that's where I step in and cover down for him. I have people who cover down for me. For those not familiar with David Henry, I can tell you that he's another Sonoma resident, has shown exemplary skills in being able to help organize and listen to the needs of the community. He'll talk in more detail what Team Rubicon does and how we do it. But in short, that we are an all-volunteer, mostly primarily veteran-based and definitely veteran-run organization. That gives more than we'll talk about that's specific to issues regarding fire. I just want to chime in on, as a fellow veteran myself, the concept of having a sense of purpose makes more sense than not. We are very blessed to be able to continue serving our country, and this is a great value add for us. So as you hear all these great things you do and you scratch your head and you wonder, seems too good to be true. A big part of this is because our veteran community absolutely really enjoys being part of the solutions, bringing so many of those skills that we learned in the military at the time. So Mr. David Henry, I would like you to introduce yourself with your background. You said a buyout earlier, but I can assure you that he has my highest of confidence and support and will be doing an outstanding job in supporting you. That's all for me. David, you're up.
Thanks, John. And I think I'm going to share my screen at this point.
And while you're doing that, David, I'll just kind of let folks know that Team Rubicon, and I failed to mention this earlier, I should have. Team Rubicon is a group that focuses on serving vulnerable and at-risk populations affected by disaster. And then, so, you know, David will go into a lot more detail than that, but just wanted to give you the 30,000-foot overview. So take it away, David.
Thank you, Roberta, and thank you, John. You're so kind. Like John said, I am a retired U.S. Air Force. I retired in 2000. I'm sorry, yeah. I didn't retire in 1980. That's a typo. I joined in 1980. I retired in 2000. I was a crew chief on the C5 and the C-141 and a flight engineer on the 141. After that, I went to combat communications. And I joined Team Rubicon back in August of 2018. Since then, I've moved my way up the ladder. Now I am a planner for the city, and in lieu of, we do not have a metro planner, I moved into that role as well. So John's right. I am the primary contact of for Team Rubicon in this area. I live in Sonoma County. I actually live in Santa Rosa, so I can make myself available at any time. So a little bit about what I'm going to talk about. The goals of Team Rubicon, what we see, how we see the world. Remember, you know, we're all mostly ex-vets, and so we see the world in a different light than some. We are a data-driven society. We live by the I'm being constantly asked, how much wood did you cut down? How many houses did you do? How much square footage did you pile up? That kind of thing. And then we'll look at our role in Sonoma County. And then we'll go by the numbers. We'll kind of walk you through a little bit about where we sat and how we do business as a nonprofit. We'll go into a little bit about the history of Team Rubicon, our capabilities, our partners, and how you can join. And what I mean by join is not if you want to be a gray shirt, that's the picture that you see right there. That's fine. But if you cannot do that, there are a lot of other ways to be a part of it. One thing you'll see as part of our core principles is know your job, and everybody has a job, and you might be, I'm a little older, so I don't sling around a chainsaw as much as I used to, but that's okay. There are other jobs for old people like me. So Team Rubicon, it's not your mother's disaster response. It's unless your grandmother curses like a sailor, runs a chainsaw, and refuses to accept status quo. Remember, we're old vets, and so we tend to think like that. We tend to, if you see us around, we tend to talk like that, not just the cursing like a sailor, but also in the language that we use. Yeah. And our brand is built around grit, determination, transparency. That transparency is huge. Anyone can log on to our website at any time and learn about where every dollar is going. We believe that all of us are built for something, and men and women who volunteer for Team Rubicon are built to serve. And that's kind of what I was going with earlier is that everybody's got a job, and if you cannot serve in one place, you can serve in another, and there are plenty of jobs to go around. So a little bit about overview of the company. It was founded by two Marines following the earthquake of in Haiti of 2010. We'll go more into that later. Team Rubicon conducts relief operations, domestic and international. We're going to talk about domestic today, but we do have an international team that travels all throughout the world. We have 177 full-time employees, 1,600 plus leaders, and those are all volunteers, and 138,000 members. That number is old. I think it's somewhere north of 150,000 now. We are a 501(c)(3), and because of our transparency, we're a platinum rated gold star, and we 4 out of 4 star in Charity Navigator. If you're not too familiar with Charity Navigator, it's a website you can go to, and it lists all the charities including ours. And how you get that is how much well, they have a lot of metrics, but one of the metrics is how much of the dollar that you give actually goes to the people that help, and ours is in the 90-95% range. So John, feel free to chime in if you feel so. Okay. We are broken up into 4 major branches in the United States. We fall under the West Branch, and there's a lot of that's a lot of territory, but we do well. Also, what falls under the West Branch is Alaska and Hawaii. I'm still waiting for that trip to Hawaii, but they tend to keep those to themselves. So. Our brand. So back to that your grandmother's, not your grandmother's nonprofit. And we get dirty, we have fun, and I just got back from Operation Snowball, which is up in Nevada County. We got about I don't know, probably about 50 or so homeowners out from under what they called Snowmageddon. I don't know if you're familiar what happened out there, but they lost power. With that, some of them lost heat. And most of the county up there is over the age of 75. We were able to help them not only get into their property if they left town beforehand, or if they decided to wear it out to get out of their property because they had a lot of down trees. We were also delivering wood to people that couldn't get out and get it for themselves. And we're cutting ingress and what we call ingress and egress routes if they could, so they can get back into their property. PG&E was busy until the day we left, and they're probably still busy restoring power up there. And that, yeah, so we got most people taken care of. We're there about a week and a half, sleeping in a converted rec hall. There was probably about 30 of us total in it, going in and out throughout the week. But remember that we're all volunteers. So some of our volunteers can only do it on the weekends. Some of us can do it, I'm retired, so I can do it, just take time off to do it. But in the weekends, we tend to have most of our volunteers. So our domestic capabilities, this is where we shine. Damage assessment. And this is only at the request of the local or state emergency manager. We do debris removal and EOC support. The important thing, one of the important thing on that one is we work under the NIMS, the national, gosh, it's tough for me to remember, National Incident Management System, which allows us to easily fold into any of the major support, whether it be CAL FIRE or the Red Cross, and all of our paperwork and all of our management structure is built on that model. So we can easily fold ourselves in, or and sometimes even take over the operation. We do expedient home repair. Some people, like in the hurricanes down in Texas, we were busy doing that. We were busy rebuilding homes. Up here, our biggest thing is hazard mitigation and route clearance. So what we'll do is, we were out at last month, we were out at a property owner's place, building him a route clearance out because a 72-year-old man, he was completely, he had two buildings. They were completely destroyed during the glass fire. They came in and they removed all the hazardous material and then left him, and he had nowhere to turn, so he turned to us. He called us, actually called John, and John called me, and so we were out there for a weekend. We cleared his road so that if in an emergency, he can get in and out. But even if he didn't have an emergency, he still get in and out of there, because here is a 70-year-old man living in a tent, no heat, no running water, no electricity. He's a tough old bird, and I'm gonna go out and see him this afternoon and see how he's doing.
Hey,
And
David,
then- yes,
I just want to chime in. You're doing a great job of saying what we are. I just want to distinguish what we're not. So sometimes people confuse us as a first response organization. And I want to be clear about that. Your first response groups are your paid professionals and or your contracted professionals. So with regard to trees, companies like PG&E, which are contracted by the county and so forth, they're your first response. We come in just about the time the homeowners are returning, and organizations like yourself give us a very clear understanding of what the needs that are not being met by the state or county or city officials. So your role is critical to us. I mean, I cannot emphasize that enough. You give us qualified intel on the scope of need based on the community. This can either be before, we call this blue skies work, or gray skies after the event. And then from that, we can do all these items you're talking about. But I do want to make sure you realize that we're not going in with fire trucks and ambulance and helicopters. And this scene you're seeing here in the image is actually a good example of our international operations. Our medical support teams are, because of legal issues, are pretty much not going to be activated inside domestic US. That's all. Thank you.
thanks, John. So what we do is we serve our communities by mobilizing our veterans to continue their service. And let me just stop right there. And John hit a very important point in his introduction, is a lot of our veterans, including me, when they get out of the service, they are lost. They had a mission. They did their mission. They did their missions with distinction, and then all of a sudden the day comes by. They take off their uniform, and the government says, "Thank you very much for your service," and so they're kind of lost. And so what we do is we give them a purpose again. They get a uniform, which is a gray shirt. We have a saying: you have to earn your gray shirt. You know, you show up on operations and you earn it, and it's a lot of hard work. But we leverage the skills and experience that they already have. You know, most of them have been deployed, so they've been in disasters. They know how to deal with the humanitarian side of it. They know how to. So, you know, the military isn't just, you know, wars, bombs, and guns. A lot of it has to do with the humanitarian side of that, and they already have those skills. So we press hard on them for that. So this is a picture of what we call, you know, one of our core competencies. We are the guys, what we call mucking out a house. This house was damaged by flood, which destroys all the carpets, like you say there, but more than that. So we'll go out and clean out their houses and get them ready for the insurance company, the contractors that they can hide. So our mission is about people who cannot afford this rebuilding process, who can either they don't have insurance or don't want insurance, or they don't have the means to do it. We look very hard on a what we call SVI, Social Vulnerability Index. The higher you are on that index, it's a number from 0 to 1, the more vulnerable you are. So we look very hard at that. But our local planners, like me, will go into, although let's take Keelsburg on, for example, they will, you know, who has a particularly low social vulnerability index, but we go into there's pockets of there that are certainly very high, and so we make that case to corporate, saying that, you know, this is where we need to be. So remember, I talked earlier about transparency. All of our, being that we are a nonprofit, but all of our all of our books and whatnot is our financials are on the web. You can look at it. You can figure out again where every dollar goes. This is an example of our morning meeting. John and I have both been in plenty of these. We all huddle around and we get stuff done. So some of it, we're still in the middle of COVID right now. This number is just a little bit old, but not much. Set 9.7 million people impacted. We did several operations throughout the United States called Kick the King, where we served meals and with the local food bank. And then we have a vaccination assistance, and it's important to say assistance on there. We don't give vaccinations. We're not the medical troop, but we also help. But what we do is help provide the infrastructure for them to do it. So all they can concentrate on the medical side of it. We support the logistics of it. And let's see, what 1,300 individuals and then 103,000 people tested. So we are a part of the vaccination sites and the testing sites for COVID.
I just want to add in on, we're very, very, very mindful. Because we're military, we're used to wearing some pretty crazy protective gear. So the idea of seeing Team Rubicon people on deployment, you're going to see us wearing our safety gear to the highest. That's a big important concern when we deal with counties and cities, because they're often concerned to risk mitigation. I'm sure Fire Safe Council deals with that too. So we practice it, in this case, COVID, even above and beyond what some of the specs are out there. We're very conservative. That's all.
Thanks. So this was 2010 through 2021 last year. I pulled these numbers, so that's and so we have completed almost 1,000 operations and 635 communities served. The important number, one of the important numbers right here, is the number of volunteers that we have. They've just been phenomenal. We all have are highly trained in what we do, and then if there are holes in our training, we do that as well. For instance, the NIMS training, the ICS training, the core operations training, all of that we do in-house. And then, so what the idea is that we save communities from our volunteer service. So it's important to note that and this is the hard one for people to get their head around, is because I had that question posed to me at least a dozen times when I was up north last week. Is how much is this going to cost me, the homeowner? And the important thing that that we say, it costs the homeowner nothing. We are all volunteers. We are blessed with very good benefactors that whether it be personal people or corporations that fund our operations. So all of this is at no cost to the homeowner.
Dave, I want to add in that we actually track our volunteer hours. So if this was a state or federal declared disaster, the work that we're doing for free, we track all these hours ranked by the position that they can be reimbursed through FEMA dollars. So actually we're a profit center to the county and to the city. So that's an unusual factor. That's all because we adhere so closely to the incident command structure and the NIMS policies. And we've worked many ways with FEMA to make sure the county's getting reimbursed. I know for sure Sonoma County's already enjoyed almost $1 million of our service hours that they've received.
So John, just real quick, and I don't want to take the presentation too far afield, but so if you guys, how's that work? So you guys are volunteer. Where does the money go? I'm just curious more than anything.
That's a really great question, and we track our hours through the incident command structure. There's a and you I saw that you have the ICS system in your organization as well, so you're familiar with the 211, and that's a sign-in sheet that begins the tracking. That is a signature document, a legal document that shows to FEMA and other reimbursing state organizations the amount of volunteer level hours that were dedicated, and then also ranks it. So there's a different schedule for, say, if I'm an incident commander, I think it's a few dollars higher in that rate. That's all calculated, then bundled together and submitted in our after action plan to the county in our closeout. So the county and city or whoever's getting reimbursed can take those dollars. We are aware that there are grants and so forth that are available. We have a different kettle of fish we deal with that, but for the most part, those hours it's actually a very important quality that we overlook sometimes, that really helps the county save money. And it goes directly to the county. They in turn turn in those volunteer hours, as I'm sure you turn in your volunteer hours, and the county gets reimbursed.
Okay,
Okay.
I'm just kind of curious what the county does downstream. All right, go ahead, Dave. Sorry, I didn't.
Okay, no worries. Thank you. So a little bit about our social media presence. You could read that as much as I can, but that's our social media presence. Facebook is the only one I use, but as far as we have a whole team dedicated to all of those. Okay, so history of response operations, you can see 2010, we had 4, as opposed to last year, actually 2020, 383, a little bit less last year because of the pandemic, but that will tick up this year as well. I mean, I've been on 3. Yeah, it's the end of January. I've been on 3. So and that's just West Branch. So we have this is the entire company. Okay, and then this is our volunteer structure, how many we have, and you can see that it grows quite well. Last year we had 150,000 plus, but I could say that this year that number will continue to go up. So this is what I was talking about earlier. We have, we are a disaster response company, and that's how we work. But we also help our veterans transition into the civilian world. We give them, we can talk like them, we think like them, and from most of their things, what they're ever feeling, we can relate to them, and so we're able to help the community by helping our veterans as well. So here, a new calling for veterans. So this is kind of what I was talking about earlier. It applies the experience of chaotic environments into a useful and necessary cause. We help the community alongside with with our fellow veterans, and we affirm that dedication that they have had. So they're not alone. They're back to where it's. When I first got off of my first deployment, my wife asked me how it was, and I can only attribute it to putting on an old comfortable shoe. It helps me, and I know it helps them as well. So you can, to become a gray shirt, you can register with us with teamrubiconusa.org. /volunteer, but also, if you want to learn more about the company, that is our website, teamrubiconusa.org. And like I said, everybody has a job here, and if you can't become a gray shirt, you can give financially. We have, you can organize fundraisers, you can organize to help us just work better, but you can, well, there you go, you can read it. That is a part of a rebuilding project that we did. And we have a lot of skills that we can use within the community. So a little bit of history. January 2012, 7.0 earthquake hit Haiti. In the moments, hundreds of thousands were injured, infrastructure buildings were lost, destroyed, and made homeless. So, and then, so in the following days, a lot of the traditional aid organizations, they couldn't get in with the citing the work of the dangerous and unstable work conditions. There were two individuals, Jake Wood and William McNulty, that decided to act. They gathered supplies, volunteers, and a small group of veterans and first responders, and made their way out there. They couldn't get into Port-au-Prince, so they actually flew into the Dominican Republic, crossed the Antibornite River, which is the natural border between the two countries. That is what we call, that is why we call ourselves Team Rubicon. That was their Rubicon. The Rubicon is actually a river in Rome. And by crossing the river, they acknowledged the commitment to what they're doing. The old idea of burning the boats. They knew they weren't going back. That small group, they focused on the populations that were overlooked by the traditional nonprofits. They applied their medical leadership skills that were honed in the service in the military. Team Rubicon provided thousands of volunteers of Haiti's earthquake, and from the initial operations of the larger ones grew. And therefore Team Rubicon was born. So in 2010, the earthquake hit. That was the inception of the company. That picture on the left is a picture of Jake. In 2011, the tornado hit in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. So that we started pivoting to our domestic operations. There was a lot to do just in this country. 2012, Hurricane Sandy hit, and that they started realizing that there was a national need there. So the tornado in Moore, Oklahoma, that's when the Team Rubicon began implementing the ICS, or the NIMS program. So we can easily walk into it. And then in the tornado 2014, Fauquier, Arkansas, they launched a comprehensive training pipeline to include heavy, you see the lady there, heavy equipment operator. 2015, we were growing decentralized operational response. The flood in 2016, we opened our National Operations Center in Dallas, Texas. Hurricane Harvey, Irma, and Maria, we launched different rebuilding pilot programs. And then 2018, we started our rebuild program in Texas, Florida, and Puerto Rico. 2019, cyclones Ida, Kenneth in Mozambique. That fell into our international. So our recent ops, Hurricane Florence, Hurricane Michael, our COVID operations. We talked about that earlier, domestic for testing and for food service. A lot of the COVID put a lot of people out of work, so therefore the need was huge for food, and we did a huge response on that on Kick the King. So we completed over 2020, completed over 327 COVID response operations. And then 2021, we began our vaccination program and our Afghan resettlement program. A lot of veterans were troubled, including myself, about how how the government just pulled out of that Afghanistan. And this was our way of saying, hey, you're not forgotten. We're not leaving you behind. And a lot of our gray shirts even today help the Afghan families resettle into the United States. So we're all hazards company. We talked about incident management. We talk about site surveys and damage assessment and how that happens. Disaster mapping and work order mitigation. We'll do the debris management, the hazard mitigation. We talked about the expedient home repair. Volunteer management, and that's a huge one, because a lot of people say, hey, I just want to help. What can I do? And to manage that resource is huge. And if an organization says no to volunteers, is not because they don't care or not because they can't use the help, because they always can. It's because they can't manage it. And so we'll manage that. And then since we have first responders on our roles, we do medical support and primary care only in our international routes. And so what that John was right on that picture you saw earlier. That was an international picture, and we do that for our international people who cannot. Who don't have the facilities there. So John is a very very typical. He's of our members. He's a Marine Corps 20 years. No,
can't let that slide. Sorry, I'm Air Force.
That's Jon.
Different John. Okay, sorry.
Let me explain a little about the John Segudo. John Segudo is a Vietnam veteran. Flew as a PJ. And what did you tell me, John, the other day? Says it's like we help the SEALs on their worst day.
Yeah. Well, we true, as I think we're getting to the point that we signed up to serve our country so long ago. In my case, I served as a combat medical type person. Every skilled person that I've ever met in any post, even pencil pushers, have a tremendous understanding of what it's like to serve. And when we come home, quite frankly, we don't find that same fit. And it's so important to me. I can tell you this saves lives, giving a sense of purpose back to the people who served our country. It's a very hard transition. Certainly it was difficult in Vietnam. it's a near and dear part of me. At the end of our operational working days, we have our safety briefings and after action. Then we round, if it's appropriate, a campfire, and we share stories. Sometimes it's simply stories about how we live our lives and how we're getting along. This is where a lot of the healing begins. You hear about this stuff, and you may not be aware, but 22 veterans are committing suicide every day. And quite frankly, that's a number that I cannot accept, and there's a reason I'll continue to volunteer hard. And that's a big part of why I encourage you to lean into Team Rubicon in any function. Every time we deploy a gray shirt, and I know quite a few in this county, they absolutely tell me how much they need it. Their families tell me how much it was important for them to get out of the house. So, and I'm sorry, I confused with John Connors, who's an amazing man. I heard my name and I was like, what? We're very proud of our particular organizations we serve, as you can imagine. That's all. Sorry.
Yeah, we have yeah. So John Connors is a Marine and always will be a Marine. I had the pleasure to serve last week as our incident commander, a young Marine, and talk about attention to detail. My goodness, he was there. He was on it. So these are our cultural principles: mission first, gray shirt always. That is huge. Now on the picture on the left here, that's a picture of Morgan Rains. She is one of our best sawyers out there. And just because you're a woman doesn't mean you can't sling around a chainsaw. Morgan's a lot better than I am at it, and I'm proud to say that. Everyone has a role, know it. And that goes into what we were talking about earlier, is there's a role for everyone in the company. It may not be slinging around a chainsaw. It might be working in our planning staff, or our command and general staff, or working as a logistics person, just making sure those people like Morgan have the things that they need. One of the things that we are pride on is we get shit done. We have rules, we follow those rules, but at the end of the day, it's all about helping the homeowner get over their worst day. We have a saying in there: change your socks. What that means is we work hard, we play hard, and sometimes we rest hard. And that's what that's all about, is, going home or going to your hotel room, or, you know what, I need a down day. This has just been too much for me. Adults only. We are not a bunch of children just running around willy-nilly. We are adults. We act like it. And then lastly, your mother's a donor, and this one is huge as well. Because on that first deployment, when you talk about Jake Woods and his company, in the company, his mother was a donor. That's where that comes from. And so we treat every donor dollars as if your mother or my mother gave that money, and we treat it as such. So we are very lucky to have corporate partnerships, and some of those are USAA. If you are military or private military, you're very familiar with USAA. Carhartt, AT&T, Southwest, Farmers, Microsoft, FedEx, Chase, and Starbucks. One thing that's very missing from this one is Home Depot is one of our big supporters. And that's all I have. Does anybody have any questions?
Okay, why don't you go ahead and stop share screen, and then we'll open up for questions. I'll start off with, I've got a handful of questions.
Okay, go ahead and I'll stop.
Okay, let me take care of. Okay.
As I figure out how to stop sharing.
Oh yeah, there should be a button there somewhere.
Yeah, there probably is.
Okay. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and start throw out some questions that I had while we were, listening. While I was listening to you. Let's see. Let me write something down here. Okay, perfect. So you answered some of these questions I was writing down as you were talking. So you don't just do disaster response. Sounds like you all have some other services. My main question I think I'll start off with is how do folks connect to your services? Like wildfire blows through here and then things are smoldering. You guys are kind of coming in post fire, sounds like. How do we as local groups get people connected to your services?
Well, the easiest way to do that is to call or email me. Since
Okay.
I am your city planner, I'm also your metro planner for up here. I will get that ball rolling in our services.
Okay, so within your incident command system structure, so as you start to deploy, is it a good idea for me to just tell folks like the local CERT teams or COPE or whoever, local fire safe council, hey, if you have questions, comments, or need the services of Rubicon, just call David. Here's his number.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
I cringe when I say that, but that is true.
Okay. Okay. Very
John?
good.
I'm going to add probably a way to make sure, because of David, like I said, if ever dares to take a vacation day or something, you might not be. So email works really well. You can copy me as well. And what we'll do is, one of the two of us, no matter how busy we get, can always route it to some of the other people as well. So all of us, the standard format for a Team Rubicon email is our first last name separated by a period at the teamrubiconusa.org. Mine's in the chat section now, but that would be true of David, myself, and virtually anyone who you want to reach out to.
Okay. And so we don't have to go to the county or any of that noise.
Not at all.
Okay. So yeah, as long as your guys' phone number and emails are in the chat, that'll help folks a lot. So the other question I have is now, you mentioned that most of your services are directed toward at-risk populations. So if we're making a request to you all, what are the qualifiers to be able to use your services?
Good question. That I'm going to take off your plate. So I would say any and all. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to be taking away from someone's livelihood. So therefore, if someone is we can do it for free, but Bob's chainsaw service, we don't want to be taking away from them. So if a homeowner cannot, whether by means or by or money or means, we can certainly help them. So we have the aging population who cannot do for themselves sometimes. We have a population that cannot financially do for themselves, or sometimes, they don't have insurance because either they couldn't afford it or they decided it wasn't necessary. And so we can certainly help out there. But, certainly you can bounce things off of me or John, and I cannot make that decision, but I push it up to John and the powers that be, and they make that decision whether or not we can move forward.
Okay.
Roberto, I'm just going to add one more component. David will probably send you a list of kind of questions we do specific for mitigation. Right. Because we're a free resource. You can imagine the genie's out of the bottle and every county is asking for the free resource. Sure. So can you imagine that? Yeah. So these questionnaires are designed to help basically drill down on the information we need to make a judgment call. anything you can add to that that gives more fidelity, knowing that we're focusing on this high risk community. And I've worked on high risk communities that are right next to very wealthy communities. We just need your assistance in defining why this is a special need, because we for instance stopped a mitigation project that was rolling quickly in a mudslide, and it turned out to be we're helping Oprah Winfrey clear out her multi-million-dollar estate. Okay, that's taking money away from the local community. We don't want to do that. So that's why we discern that.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, and it sounds like somebody like Oprah would have the resources herself to do that, but I don't know.
So, sometimes we get a little too ahead of ourselves. We have to watch out.
Yeah, well, there you go. Okay, I can imagine how that went. Okay, so if you guys have that questionnaire that we could share, with our CERT teams and COPE groups ahead of time, that'd be great, so that they can kind of keep that in a folder and go, hey, this person might qualify for, for help. Because we don't want to just kind of say, oh, just call Rubicon and have them make the call. And then you guys say, well, we're kind of busy and you don't quite fit the need, parameters. Other question I have is, do you only work with military or former military? Or do you also work with former firefighter, law enforcement, or anything like that?
The answer to your question is no.
Okay.
And that's the short answer. The long answer is our organizations make up 3 primary groups. Military, first responders, and what we call kick-ass civilians. So that covers everybody. And so we work with, and we have on our organization, all of those 3.
Okay, awesome.
Would like to add again, just to add a little bit more layer onto that. Yes, we're divided. We're finding the increasing growth in our organization is in fact non-military. But I think you keyed on something else. I want to make sure we answered that. We work with every organization. One of the things that we're trying to do now is that there's other groups who do the same projects that we do, Bethel Global Response, Samaritan's Purse, and so forth. So we're trying to get ahead of this. Let's all do the same thing at the same time, service delivery, and break it into coordinated events so that we can work together. This is why we work with all the VOADs, COADs as well, and community leaders.
Okay, great, thanks. Mason, you have or is that Julie with her hand up? Julie or Mason? I can't tell.
Oh, it's me, because I just realized I'm on Mason's link for some reason.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Okay.
So
I was confused about that the whole time.
So John, hi, and thank you guys so much. I want to talk with you offline because I have questions about some things that you have said about working within within ICS. And so I have 2 questions related to that. So when you submit your 214s, and I realize this is going to vary from incident to incident, what agency are you submitting those to if a private group or an NGO makes that request? So you're saying that request does not have to go up the chain, and that you can respond directly to a request from an individual, a homeowners association, a neighborhood group. Am I understanding you correctly? And if so, who are you then submitting your 214s to?
That's a good question, Julie, because if you were able to do that, that'd be real helpful.
Well, I'm also remembering back to 2017 when our neighborhood was, as you know, blasted by the Nuns fire. Team Rubicon, that's when I actually met John, was right there offering to help us, but our county had no place in their matrix at that time for that type of volunteer disaster service worker resource. And they did some things for a number of us, but they were not able to do much. So a lot of things have changed since then. And maybe this is too much detail for this particular conversation, but I'm curious.
I don't know, John, or David, can you help with that?
Hi, Julie. Good to see you as your alias that you weren't. No.
Yes, I'm pretending to be Mason.
I thought it was duplicity. Yes, the question was twofold. One is, who do we submit our hours to? We coordinate not only with groups like your group, by example, is a fantastic group that we like to work with, because it really is.
But I could not request you. I would have to put the request through an agency who would then take it up the chain through the EOC.
All right, so to put my incident commander's hat, because I also work in the city of Sonoma in the emergency management office. What happens in that quick information flow is that all of the information of needs requested should go into the leadership of the emergency control operation, the EOC. The EOC in turn turns around to all their resources and hands it off to find the right swim lane to answer that particular need. So in your case, if there were horses had broken out of the fence, they'd be calling your organization, Julie, and not ours. So there is some deciding being done at the EOC. They don't necessarily know all the different players, and groups like Team Rubicon don't persist throughout the entire range of the need. We tend to come in about the time the homeowners are returning, and we were operational for weeks at a time, not months at a time. So we're only
my
one
second question. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that's one of many parts of this formula that the EOC needs to look at, and why they're making, like, they want to be the central repository. A typical workflow would be like the 211 that people call in. A request for, say, muck out services or hazardous trees has been posted. Sometimes we use an intermediate software program called Crisis Cleanup. And that document, and so we did in the Sonoma fires, and that documents all the different requests on a shareable website that different responding agencies can check out, like a library book, the service that we go to that operation. That allows multiple agencies to get involved that may have overlapping functions. And we talk amongst ourselves to saying, okay, Bethel Research Global, you go over there and sift and sort. We're going to go over there and take care of hazard trees. We have heavy equipment coming in from Bill Graham. And that way we can coordinate all that to really expedite the service delivery. And Julie, you're right. We've grown immensely in Sonoma County from our first flame up to where
Sonoma
we are now.
County is growing, which is good. But just to clarify one other point here, because that was super information, very encouraging, although I think there are a number of glitches within that. But what I am interpreting from everything you're saying is that most of the time, not always, but most of the time, and if we're going to be Sonoma County specific, I think this has been the history with Team Rubicon, you are being deployed or activated in the recovery phase, not during the hot zone response. And so there's a very big difference in how the resource requests are made through the chain of command.
Julie, I mentioned that early on. I couldn't say it enough. You know, we are
right.
We show up right about the time the homeowners are returning. We put our eyes on and start helping out, sometimes assisting the EOC in our all hazards capable. I'm like, for instance,
but disaster service workers are, yes, I heard you very clearly. You're not first responders, but so yes. So you can be a, second in or even last in while response phase is still taking place. But most of what you're describing sounds like it's during the active recovery, when there's a lot more flexibility about how requests are made and how much more directly they can be made.
Yeah, we're like every other NGO or VOAD that comes in at the recovery phase. And that's an important distinction, because the VOAD community and COAD community is the same family that we're all part of. And this is probably, I've seen leaps and bounds in how well coordinated the VOAD community is. And that's where we get a lot of my information. I'm always looking for David's always looking for the unmet needs of the community that align well with the underserved, be they high risk, elderly, veteran, and then any variation therein. They can't get safely to and from their house. We then take that through a process, as David mentioned. We carry that information and package it during a discovery phase that goes up to our top leadership, and they try to deconflict it with other operations that might be working at the same time. And our equipment and available talent. Remember, we're all volunteers. So that's the problem, is that we may have a great need and spot on to what we do, but we have all our volunteers responding to Kentucky or Louisiana or something like that.
You're just a huge, an overflowing volcano of information. And I so appreciate everything. And I will reach out to you guys if I have more questions. I'm so encouraged.
I left my phone number on the chat, so you can call me directly if you want to.
I can find you. Thank you, Roberta, for inviting these guys too.
Awesome, Julie, and thanks for your interaction, because it's all important stuff. And I'm sure some of the folks who are on COPE groups or CERT teams, are going to get some value out of this as well. So, David or John, another question I have, and I was going to springboard off an earlier question, but regardless, so what's the level of commitment? And I'm thinking about, I've got a friend of and myself included, but I have a friend of mine. He's retired military. He's a army medic. He's also was special forces, and he's retired. I think looking for something to do. And so, what's the level of commitment?
Well, that I could say that it depends, but on the job, like I said earlier, everybody's got a job, and I mean, I can tell you my commitment as a local planner is not very high. A couple of maybe 2-3 hours a week. But my commitment as a gray shirt, is a lot higher than that. But it's all volunteer organization. So what I tell people is you can always say no. I'm doing something that weekend, or I have, like John, he had to take time out last week because of the new grandbaby, and so yeah, we're all volunteers, and there's always somebody willing to help you. John's my boss, so I lean on him quite heavily, especially at the beginning of my tenure here, to get what I needed done. But so I wouldn't say not a lot, 2-3 hours a week, but you can be as busy as you want to be.
Yeah.
I'll add to that. And Dave, that's a great description. We are a volunteer group. So, and we treat our volunteers like major donors. And that said, that, we're not going to ask you anything that you can't do. I mean, you can always say no, but when we do deploy you, we're going to get your flights covered. We're going to put you in at least a cot and feed you. You're not going to have to go out of pocket for that. But we know that we're asking many times people to give up their vacation days. And and if you're retired, that's a lot of vacation days, and we take advantage of that. A lot of people, particularly ex-military, once they get a taste for it, they want more. And a lot of people which are non-military get a taste of it, they want more. So, I call them paper members. There's a lot of people which are on our membership board roster, over 150,000. You can imagine we don't deploy 150,000 people, but some of those people are able to, and they are emergency managers. They're members. They signed up to be members. They want to see what we're doing, get behind the sheet and see exactly what goes on in our organization. And we're proud to have you on board with that. At a different time in your life, you may get a flash on your phone that says, be deployed. We're going off to the Kentucky. They just had a bad flood, or up in Alaska or Washington. And you can meet it. And honestly, I get interviewed all the time. Why do I do this after 2 decades plus? It's because I want to be associated with some of the most amazing people in the world who put their lives on hold to help others. And that's what your group does, so this is just taking it to another level. I like the organization. I'm sold. I even wear the badge, I'm committed. So that's it.
Yeah, you're committed. Great. Well, thanks. I have one more question. We're going to try to end at about 3:30, so we have a little time left. And some folks, unfortunately, had to pop off a little early. But another question I have now: do you guys only deploy if there's a declared disaster? And the reason I ask is I've got a couple ideas. One is, with the Fire Safe Sonoma, we from time to time get folks, asking us, oh, can I get some help doing some defensible space on my property? Or is there a resource I can use to help me do some structural hardening on my house? Now, do you guys offer that, if there's not a disaster, do you have resources that folks can tap into?
And answer your, so yes, we can. There are several arrows in our quiver. We can go from a full-on deployment down to what we call neighbors helping neighbors. So if like, for instance, I had a group or an individual that came out that had the means, but he didn't have as financial means, but he didn't have, he needed it all done by himself. So what he contacted me, and we came out for a weekend, and we use it as as a Sawyer proficiency weekend. We just went down and cut down trees. And that fell under an operation. Or for instance, if somebody needs help just doing something, a muck out, or they can certainly call us, and we can go down that neighbors helping neighbors route, and we can do it that way as well. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a declared disaster for us to work.
Okay, great.
I'll just add to that real quick. We have about 3 categories. We talk about operations as being the big heavy lift where we're willing to fly people in and set up a sustainable operation. The next tier down is an event, and that is often done on weekends. And that's when we ask the local volunteers to step up and see if they can help. We've done this to help rehabilitate veterans halls and fire stations. And as you mentioned, a couple of cases were neighbors where they simply were too elderly to clear out a defensible space. Worst that can happen is we can say we don't have an available volunteer resource. And that's really something we're constantly trying to activate, which is why we want more members. If everyone in Sonoma signed up to be a gray shirt, we'd always have an available resource to pump someone out to say, hey, go help your neighbor this way. We'll help coordinate the need so you get there. Now, the last level that was mentioned is the neighbors helping neighbors. And that is open-ended. It's literally the same, like my neighbor during COVID may not be able to drive to fill up their car during the high risk period. So I'll go drive their car, fill it up, get some groceries for them. Just common sense stuff, but it kind of instills our humanitarian aspects of what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, so that's inspiring me, you guys, because Fire Safe Sonoma, we recently received from the California Fire Safe Council a tool catch trailer, a tandem axle, pretty good sized trailer. And we're right now in the process of outfitting it with $10,000 worth of tools and equipment. And so on that resource, we're going to have, a chainsaw or 2 and definitely some pole saws. And then the plan is to deploy that resource on a weekend or week-long basis to, I think we have 9 identified community groups that we've pre-qualified to use the resource. Now, as that thing gets deployed, one of the concerns I have is, getting folks trained up to use those, power tools. It sounds like you guys have folks that are already skilled with those power tools. Is there a way that we can partner up with you guys so that as we develop our deployment schedule, we can maybe have a couple of your experienced folks go out with the resource and say, hey, we're the folks that are going to use the power tools? Is that something we could talk about, or is that, something we can explore, or is it off the table with regard to your scope of, what you guys do?
I just will jump in. You can follow up here, because when you mention things like chainsaws and things that can cut off limbs in a heartbeat, we have a very, very regimented set of skills that go through task books and training. And we're actually in the effort of following in the National Forestry methods of skills training. And to that end, we want to use our own equipment in our own way with our own training. That becomes a formal operation. But you did say one of my favorite words was to partner with. And I cannot tell you how that just makes me shine inside. That's been my goal ever since. And yes, there are times we're going to get in there and we're going to mark a bunch of trees, drop a lot of hazards, bring them on the ground where they need to be bucked and limbed. That's a smaller risk for another group that can come in later on and do that. And just excuse my act, I'll just give a quick metaphor. Like Billy Bob's got a backhoe and he can get in there and drag these trees to a safe place, or somebody else has got a chipper and they can bring it down and spread it to areas that need for erosion concerns. So the more we can partner in our particular swim lanes, the better we are. A lot of times what might work, particularly in this last operation, was a good example, is that we can drop the trees. We might even be able to, limb them and buck them, but we need someone to chip them. And the chipping and disbursement is a task that we'd love to partner with someone who has that skill. We'll bring it ripe and ready for you to chip up, and then we'll stand back because we don't want to touch that dangerous equipment. And
we should talk about that, because we actually do, as it turns out, have access to a chipper. If not, we could rent one. And we wouldn't, Fire Safe Sonoma, we would never, our folks, contract labor maybe, but we wouldn't be engaged with any kind of limbing, and neither would this particular resource I'm talking about, a tool catch trailer. It's really more for community work parties to get some work done, and maybe help some folks who physically are unable to do defensible space themselves or whatever. Depends on how it's deployed locally within the scope of the local community group.
So
But-
Roberta, have them sign up as Team Rubicon Sawyers and they'll get the right training.
There we go. Yeah, actually, I was talking to a group yesterday, a representative of a local fire safe council yesterday, about doing the training in front of this. So would you guys be able to maybe provide training to folks in terms of the power tool use?
Yeah, yes, you will be a gray shirt member to do that. And you'll go through our process. We have a very clear definition. Everything's observed. Just because you know how to work a chainsaw and you may do it as a profession doesn't mean you're going to get granted permission to be a so
Right.
we look at attitude and safety concerns and proper use of PPE and so forth. So there's a lot more to it than just we know how to wield a chainsaw. And I absolutely mean that. If you really want to get that training you're talking about, it doesn't cost anything to join Team Rubicon. We do a background check. You're a member. And then at that point, you say, which venue do you want to go down? I like the Sawyer direction. Go down that route. I believe David is a Sawyer, for instance.
Yeah.
And he can start a Saw 1 and Saw 2. So you go through the same. And honestly, if I had friends who just have orchards and they want to learn how to, I'd say the same thing. Free training as long as you're a member. And then, of course, be prepared. You might use you in the future.
Yeah, but what if we wanted you guys to provide the training and not have people become a member? Is that something you could do, David, maybe independently? And then we are actually planning on setting aside some chunk of money, to provide the training. I'm not sure.
As long as the logo's off.
Yeah, I can do it, but I will be wearing a different shirt.
Right. Okay. Okay. So maybe you and I could talk offline about
Yeah,
that.
sure.
Julie, you have another question. Chime in.
You asked the question. My question was going to be about training. And so I have a second part to that. So we'll just do it offline.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
So definitely needed. And I would love to talk about partnerships with Fire Safe Sonoma and Team Rubicon. So
Definitely.
thank you.
All right. Well, I'm sorry to take all the airtime, but anybody else have any questions they want to toss out there? Carolyn or Raymond or Nikki or anybody else you have any questions, please shout out. Okay. Well, we're like 4 minutes before, we were out of time, but, so thank you, David, and thank you, John, for the information. This is good. And please get us those pre-qualifier forms.
Right, I even wrote it down. I'm going to get you that questionnaire.
And we'll share it with folks ahead of time.
Okay.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, I don't want to take any more of your guys' time, but thanks for hanging in there, Nikki and Jane and Ivan and Erica. And Carolyn and Raymond, thank you very much. Hopefully this was of value to folks that attended. And next week, we're going to have Carleon Safford from Sonoma County talking about SOCO adapts and clearing the air about what SOCO adapts can and cannot do for folks. So look for that. And I think the following month, we're going to have a couple folks from the junior college talk about the junior college training that they do with regard to, wildland fire safety and forest management, etc. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending. And thanks, John and David, for giving us this information. And Mason, thank you very much for your help with this. Oh, one last thing, Mason, I don't see any questions in the chat. Do you see anything in the chat that we need to respond to or follow up with before we jump off?
No, I didn't see any questions in the chat at all. So nothing there, but just wanted to say again, I did leave a message or, important announcement telling people that I'm going to be changing the meeting settings of our monthly Fire Alliance meetings. So if you registered for this one, you might have been able to get the registration for all the other meetings. But since I'm changing the settings, you will need to register again for all the other meetings. So just keep an eye out for, same as usual, just keep an eye out for our announcements every month.
Okay, and then we'll probably have to make that information, clarify that in the next announcement too, to remind folks that, you know, you would still have to register if you've pre-registered for the ones in front of that one. So, okay, awesome. All right. Well, thank you everyone again. Definitely appreciate it, and we'll be in touch, David and John.
All right. Thank you very much.
All
I
right.
really appreciate all the great work you guys are doing. It makes a big difference when we can coordinate through your organization on the work we can do.
It takes a village, and many hands make light work.
Yes.
All
Very
right.
good. All right.
Be
Thank
safe,
you,
everyone.
guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mason, for sharing your link with me.
Of course.
I have no idea why, but it worked.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
Bye. Bye, Roberta.
See you guys. See you, Julie.
Hey, Mason and Roberta, do you have a quick second? Is this going to leave? Is this Zoom going to leave?
We can stay on if you want to talk.
I just